Moment. All right, welcome everyone to this month's Meet the Author Book Club. I'm going to just close my screen before it starts talking over me. There we go. To this month, we read the book Children of Rhema by Miriam Yvette, and I have Victoria Clapton, who was here last month with her book Myth and Memento, Myth and Memento Mori. And we also have another guest co-host today. So first, I'm just going to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. I am Agnes Wolfe, the host of Authors Alcove. I have both the Writing Corner for fantasy writers and also the Reading Nook, which has the Meet the Author book club, as well as fantasy geek out sessions. All right. And so first, Victoria, do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to in the writing realm?
Absolutely. I'm Victoria Clapton. I write fantasy, romance, and paranormal romance. And the last time that I was here, I talked about my book of Myth and Memento Mori, which is a paranormal romance. I've been working on a secret project, and I can't tell much, but I can say it's different than anything I've written before.
Awesome. I'm very curious. All right. And then now we also have somebody I've just met today, Lauren Lightus. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and what your experience in the writing and reading world is?
Well, my name is Lauren Lightus, at least that's my pen name, and I'm the co-author creator of a new webcomic called Beyond the Still Wall. And as far as writing and experience goes, I'm fairly new. I'm not a published author, but my wife and I have been working on this story for years and years and years, and we finally actually made it a reality. It's been going a year. We have something like 30 panels up on the page, and we're just excited to kind of share and see people's reactions to it. And the cons have been great.
That's awesome. And like I've said, this month we're diving into Miriam Yvette's Children of Rhema, Seeds of the Fallen. That was the first one. There's three. Is there going to be more than three?
I was asked by my husband if I would ever consider something extra. I don't know yet.
All right. Well, it's a dark fantasy romance. It takes us on an emotional journey with powerful lore, celestial beings, and the enemies to lovers themes. Anyway, Miriam, do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and what some of your other works are?
Sure. My name is Miriam Yvette. I usually write romantic fantasy just to balance the fantasy and the romance. I am actually, my current work in progress is going to be my first paranormal romance. It's going to be called After Dark. This will probably be my longest series. I think I usually stop after book 4. I complete a story. This one is going to be a little bit longer. I'm also a fantasy artist, so I draw fantasy. I've been lucky enough to draw for the lovely Victoria, some of her original characters from her books. And aside from that, I also kind of have delved into other genres as well, but I haven't published them yet. And I do a little bit on the webcomic in the series. It's called it's it's like a backrooms. I don't know the title right now, but it's like about the backrooms, and I only have one episode out, but it's always inspiring to have artists and creators like Lauren who do webcomics, and it's just really awesome having like authors like Victoria and creators like Lauren who basically dive into two things that I really love, and I like basically delving into those two.
Thank you so much for plugging them. I have not familiar, like obviously I'm familiar with Victoria, but I'm not familiar with Lawrence. I'll have to look into his
Oh
stuff
yeah.
And do you mind just sharing just a little bit about what has inspired you to start writing this before I start asking everyone some questions?
Sure. Just to admit this, I was in a live podcast earlier, and when I was asked about my book, my mind just went blank. So I did some reflecting. And it's the first two things that came to, well, three things that came to mind really was the gray area between light and darkness, having a secret identity and a living like in a pool of lies and trying to find the truth. And sorry, one more would have to be trees. Like that's the biggest element is big, huge trees.
So what do you feel your connection with trees are?
Um, I'm definitely not a tree hugger, but I did climb them a lot growing up. I'm sure all of us have our own little memories. Um, And honestly, it's just like my love for nature. It would just have to be that. Here in California, we have the sequoia trees, and going to Yosemite National Park. Almost, I think I've gone like at least 4 times in one year once, and it was just so inspiring, seeing like just the nature and the beauty, the mountains, especially, which I think inspired Melodia because it has these cascading mountains that surround the community. And I think I would have to say my life living in Washington State, because we have the Cascade Mountains that separate Washington State. So basically, climate-wise, the left side where Seattle is at is usually like a wet area. And where I grew up in Yakima, Washington, it's mostly it's like a dry, kind of like my area in Central California.
All right, before we open it up to everyone else, I did want to mention that on the 10th, we'll dive into A Court of Mist and Fury. This is a talk we were going to be doing last month, but because I had this nasty eye infection and was not going to be on camera, we decided to postpone it till the 10th. So looking forward to that while we continue talking about Rhysand, Tamlin, and all that stuff. Anyway, and I don't think any of you guys have signed up. I think I have other people that have signed up. I think I have 1 or 2 more slots still open though. Anyway, now I want to turn to Victoria and Lauren. What was one thing that you really liked about Children of Rhema?
Okay, I'm gonna try to not fangirl on this one because I love this entire trilogy so much.
Okay, wait.
But
So
one of the things,
before you go,
yeah.
so you both have read all 3 of them. Okay.
All 3. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I
Thank you,
skimmed.
Victoria.
I have to admit, I do know a little bit about what happened in the 3rd book.
Okay.
So I skimmed some of them because I was curious. So
Oh,
if we go a little bit further than just this book, I am okay with that because even though I didn't full on read, I know kind of what happens in the next few. So just so you guys can know. Okay, keep going. All right, go fangirl, please.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna condense it down without getting into because I could really, really pick apart these characters so much because I think I've now read this series 3 times, 3 times I think. I just love it, but I really Miriam has a gift of family. She has a gift of showing the dynamics in family, and it is I know it's not perfect. There are major, major flaws, as all families have, but because those flaws are there and she's so honest about them, it really makes for you feel like you're part of that family. And I just love that.
What about you, Lauren?
Oh, I don't even know where to start. Just a quick note that I have a fleeting memory, so I'm one of those people that can read a book, go 4 months, 5 months, and then it's like I didn't read the book. I know the gist of the story, but then I can pick it up again, and it's like having that adventure again, fresh. Same with
mm.
movies, so I'm great for that. The things that really stuck with me, I would definitely have to add on to what Victoria said. The family dynamics are awesome, and they don't feel contrived. They feel real. Like this is, I mean, sure, every story needs some drama. Everything's got to have a plot, but this is stuff that I could actually believe. There's no suspension of disbelief that that could happen, or it would take the planets to align for this to happen. It's like, nope, that feels almost a little too real sometimes. And I've also read her other series, Dragon of Mirrors, and Miriam has a awesome ability for father figures. I mean, she has some really strong main characters, but her supporting characters can become as much of an obsession as the main characters. And in particular, both of the father figures in both of those series are just awesome. I mean, I don't, I wanted to ask her, were these based off real men that you know, or did you just think of like what would be the most awesome dad ever? Because I wish I could be as awesome as some of them, even though they're flawed. And that's what's great. They're flawed, but they're really good people. And her supporting characters are just at least half the book to me.
Sure. I mean, I can answer that one for you, definitely. So I grew up without a dad, actually. But I also grew up with a lot of male role models. Being the middle child, I also grew up with my brother who was older than me. So I grew up with just a bunch of guys, and I was able to see different areas about them, from the most like ridiculous, embarrassing things that guys can do to like, the most mature, sacrificing things. Even family members who are, they're basically like family who have kind of picked up the role, took care of me, would give me money to spend, who I kind of looked up to. But I would have to say the main one would be my mom, who had to play the role of the dad. So I think it was her strength that really, I never felt like I needed a dad because she filled those shoes so good.
Beautiful. So one of the things I never ended up saying what I really appreciated, I always love knowing people's magic stories, or in your case, more of the lore, legend, myths, whatever. Oh, were some of how did you end up coming up with, like, especially like the celestial being stuff? Because that stuff fascinates me. Did you pull from actual myths, legends, or any personal beliefs that you personally have?
I would say nothing personal beliefs wise. It was just more of, we don't really talk a lot about celestial beings. Whenever I think about celestial beings, I think of C drama, which is Chinese dramas. They always cover that type of trope, where there's like this almost heaven realm, and there's the human realm. So I kind of took some of that and just created the world for Children of Rhema. But as far as like, like mentioning like the beliefs and everything, I think one thing, because I think this was like the one story where I really had to dive into, am I going to trigger someone if I create these characters who have beliefs and don't have beliefs? For example, Elaine is considered the town's heathen, and then we have Lucan, who is a celestial and is living like a double life. And I think I wanted to merge the gap, which is why I mentioned the gray area between light and darkness, which is basically, a lot of us have our own different beliefs, and it really wasn't about, whether we have our own political ideologies or what we believe. I think at the end of the day, when you need help, or when your life is in danger, the you don't know who the driver is when the ambulance comes in. You don't know who the doctor is who's working on you. And I feel like that it's the gray area between everyone's different mindsets. And I wanted to kind of dive that into the book. And by also adding, of course, the stereotypes, for example, Elaine not liking anything Rema related, and Lucan just really not helping her because he can be a little jerk. Um, and just kind of him having his own growth, of course, with his responsibilities and his role as a celestial being. But yeah, I hope that answers it.
Definitely. Victoria, being a big fangirl, what is a question that you have for Miriam?
Um, so I want to kind of pick up on what we were just talking about, because we have very different books that both involve celestials by accident. It's just a thing that sometimes happen. However, you picked yours up from an Asian thing. Mine came from Japanese manga and
Oh,
anime. And what I'm interested in is, I think my question is, what were there other influences? Mine had other influences too, but that's where it started from, was from that Asian influence. What else inspired you to come up with this world? This world is so colorful. These side characters, even the most minor character that you meet on Vine Road, like you know that person within seconds. You're so well descriptive. What inspired that?
I would. This is going to sound a little ridiculous, but I would have to say drawing my map because when I was working on the map, and this is how I created Vine Road, I was like, okay, I need to create like this web that's going to connect all the cities. And then I had to ask myself, who created the cities? Why? Like who created the road? Why did they create the road? And of course it's the Egyptians, and the Egyptians take no credit at all for Vine Road. They just want to sell the product, and then they go back home, and all they ask is that you don't mess with them, that you don't mess with their own their guild. And I think just going like that just created like this snowball effect where I just started creating lore based off these questions. But external wise, I would just have to say that just C drama has just it's colorful, like how you mentioned. I don't watch a lot of it anymore just because I'm more busy doing other stuff, but I think it's just it's like looking at a painting. I just have to look at it and then you can just create the rest. Yeah.
That was something that I noticed because I did not get the paper book. I got the I just read it online, but I did notice that you had a really awesome map. I'm
Mhm.
assuming you did it yourself because
Yes.
yes. So out of curiosity, do you do that for anybody else? Do you
I have not yet. No one has commissioned me for it. Usually I on my Ko-fi, I have a lot of I only do so many commissions, so I have to be asked, "Hey, can you do this?" And if I can, of course, I do it. Like I'm working for a book cover for author for Adam and for his book that's called oh my gosh, Adam, if you're listening, forgive me. Magic Court and Magic Con. Okay, sorry, Adam. But he just messaged me and I kind of wanted to give him some ideas of how to do a book cover and he was just like, "Hey, can you do my book covers?" And I'm like, "Sure." So it's not something I don't really put myself out there, but definitely something I can do for sure.
Okay, because I actually have a map that I have done myself for mine. When I saw yours, I was like, "Ooh!" And I know she's an artist, so
Yes.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's hers. I,
Yes.
I had to ask that. Lauren, did you have any other questions for her?
I just kind of had one that it of course applies to Rima because it's a romance, but I'm semi new to writing romance myself, and in Beyond the Still Wall, I only write male characters, and of course my wife pens the female characters. So when you switch point of views and you start jumping back and forth, you get you get that real dynamic that you shouldn't be able to tell that there's two authors, but I think it actually lends to the story that you're seeing not an interpreted perception, but a perception by that person that's running the character. But as far as Rima goes and romance in general, I understand that, for a slow burn and stuff, you have to interrupt things. And I guess that goes back to the question along the lines of I was asking about father figures. Do you do your interruptions on things you've experienced or people are experienced, or you just sit around and like scheme ways that could be a horrible way to derail everything and
Um,
then make the reader just go like, really? Really?
that's an awesome question. Definitely, I do a lot of that whole scheme. I scheme about it. Yes, for sure. I think I would have to say also my own experience. And your wife knows about this, about how I met my husband. It was not. It was almost like an enemies to lovers. I didn't like. He was rude to me when we first met because I guess, long story short, girls that would like him would flip his hat off. He always wears a hat, and his friend grabs his hat, throws it in the back, it lands on my thigh, and he just looks at me and he's like, "Give me back my hat." And I'm like, I just met this guy and I'm like, whoa. Mind you, I married the guy. And I'm just like, whoa, like, so knowing me and being Latina too, I'm like, no, you don't, so it was a little bit of my own experience for sure. And then I just found like this tender, he's a complete gentleman. And I found this tender side of him that he was trying to hide. And I think we can see a little bit of that in Lucan. Even in his artwork, when I went to the Yosemite Chivalry Renaissance fair in Mariposa, I have like this big like artwork of Lucan, and this lady just comes up to me and she's like, "I came here because I saw your artwork," and she looks at my husband and she's like, "Oh, you guys, they kind of look alike," and I'm like, "What? Am I doing something subconsciously that I'm not aware of?" But definitely a little bit of those, just my own personal experience, and of course trying to stretch that dough of the slow burn. I definitely have a soft spot for slow burn romance.
Out of curiosity, so like Lucan also has kind of like that soft, like secret soft side, whatever. But like, do you feel that like him writing his celestial identity and like kind of hiding it, do you feel that's justified, or do you think that he should have been more honest about who he is?
Oh, I feel like I think it would have been in danger, I think, if he were to ever tell anyone else besides his two wonderfully flawed best friends. It might lead to that darkness that's looking for him. It might put himself at risk. Of course, he ends up telling his previous lover who he really was, which was a risk, but I won't mention on what happens with that one, but I think
You can have spoilers in this one.
yes. And I don't think he would. I think he's just a little bit almost black and white in that regard, where he just doesn't want to take that risk. So many people already died because they were trying to protect him, and he no longer has a home. So I think it would have been too much of a risk.
Victoria, do you have another question?
Well, since we were already talking about Lucan, let's talk about Elaine for a minute. Because I would just want to know, when you're writing her character, you know I love her. I love every time she gets the cooking and the stars and the soup, and that's a whole thing. I'm like in bed hungry, starving, because I always read in the middle of the night. Coincidentally though, with these books, I also cursed a lot in the middle of the night, and unfortunately I'm able to contact Miriam in person, and I'm like, what? Just as much as I can. So bless her for tolerating me, because Aline made me mad a lot.
Yeah,
So much.
I would agree.
I both loved her and I cursed her all the way through. How, but that made her authentic. That made her a real, true person that reacted to things. And she'd had these horrible things happen to her. So she was conditioned to react in this way. And I'm curious, what led you to be able to create such a character that was both somehow endearing and infuriating at the same time?
I wish my husband was here because I asked him, he read the book, and I asked him, who's your least favorite character? And he's like, Elaine. And I'm like, what? But it was for different reasons. It was like because of that frustrating, like, girl, what are you doing? Um, I guess it's just her unpredictability, just making her like just the way she attacked Lucan in book one. She just got triggered because of her cup, and that was just enough for her to just snap. So really it has to do with just the unpredictability and her not thinking through her actions, and just really that you pretty much covered really well about her upbringing and how she was conditioned, and just how people viewed her. I think that ugly side, in a way, without her knowing, got inside her, where she is kind of behaving how people almost expect, but at the same time she's not realizing it.
I actually have the word frustrating. I thought it was funny that you wrote frustrating, because I actually have the word frustrating in my notes talking about Elaine. Like that was, and so I was going to ask a very similar question. Like I find her very frustrating. And fortunately, I do not have your phone number. I only have your email, because I usually am one of those that also texts my friends that are writers, being like, hey, this is where I'm at. Or like, oh my goodness, you did this. And so like, you're lucky.
Those are treats. Those are always treats. I think.
Yes. Lauren, did you have another question you wanted to ask her?
Nope, I got my questions. I got my questions out, but I just wanted to join on the Elaine bandwagon. But I don't want Lucan to get off scot-free. That guy, oh my Lord, does he deserve some of the stuff he gets? No spoilers, but he just walks into bear trap, sets him off, and then just goes ahead and steps in another one for fun. That guy he's got some issues. But that's what's fun. Like I said, following up what Victoria said, these characters are believable. These family dynamics are believable. I mean, even within the first book, Lucan almost feels like, despite Elaine not wanting it, to be part of the family, and so it's great. It's a fun ride the whole way through.
So So I am kind of new to the enemies to lovers genre, mainly because I used to not read romantasy or romance at all. And so I'm kind of new to that. Is there a book that you would say that is very similar to the book that you wrote or the series?
Oh. Mm.
What about you, Victoria? Can you think of something that you think is similar?
I think you know what I'm gonna. Okay, I can see your face. I think you know what I'm gonna say, because it's a little bit like Akatar. Although I unfortunately, to the chagrin of my friends, when I was reading those books, I picked out some of the main things that were supposed to be a surprise early on in book one. But yeah, you ladies know, Lauren, you don't know yet. I always pick the bad guy. I was not into Tamlin, and I was 1,000% for Lucan. And so that is just what I do. And so I would compare the sort of back and forth angst between Risa and Feyre a little bit to what's going on in her. Although there's nothing like this series. That's what makes Children of Rhema so unique. It sits right on its own as a fantasy. It's just unique.
I actually, once you said ACOTAR, because I actually see a lot of similarities there that I did not see till now, because I feel the same way about Feyre as I do about Elaine. So, like, they both frustrate me, and I'm like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Like, I just wish they'd make better choices, and but there wouldn't be a book otherwise, so.
This is true. I think part of that though is with Elaine, like the madder I got at her, the more I read. Like I just couldn't put it down because I had to know, like, when are you going to make the right decision? So I kept reading it. So I think it's a ploy.
And I'm glad that both of you have actually read the other two, because after I read this one, I went and I just skimmed through some of the other ones, and I did not like I have to admit, as soon as I got to the third book, like I went through the second book pretty quickly, just kind of like, what's going to happen in the future? You know, is this what I'm going to read? And when I read when I read little tidbits from the third about Lucan and some of that stuff, like, you know what I'm talking about. Then I was like, okay, you know, so like now I'm pretty sure I'm going to get into reading the other two books, because I'm very curious what happens from, you know, little things that happen to Lucan later on.
Yes, that's so funny that you mentioned this, because when I was in the other podcast, we were talking about page reads, and I said someone is reading book 3, but I don't see any page reads for book 2. I'm like, is someone reading like the last pages? And the moment you mentioned that you were skimming through like the last, I was like, oh my God, it's her.
Yeah, because like I actually just did the third, because like I did look at the second one, but not very clear, like closely. But then the third one I kind of got into. So like I was doing more reading. So it must not have picked up when I was like skimming through the second book. But no, yeah, that's why there was like probably 300 page reads in one night.
I gotta
third
say, I
book.
love book 2 just because it ties in them actually finally like, okay, like I like her, I like him, but you know, Elaine is engaged and Lucan is, you know, it's just, yeah.
So now I do have to actually read page 2. I do have to read book 2, because I really got into book 3, and I was like, okay, now I need to figure out what exactly happened that brought this, because now I'm very intrigued.
Oh yeah, it's book 2 is pretty, if you love angst, book 2 definitely.
Yeah.
And Elaine might irritate you because Lucan may or may not confess, and you might not like Elaine's reaction.
I was going to
You know,
add
there were things. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say there are other storylines. There's these like side plots going on that by book 2 you're totally invested, and I want to know what's happening with the Gypsians. I want to know what's happening to those two crazy friends that like you get. There is a point where you're not just reading to find out, you know, is Elaine ever going to do the right thing? Just say, you're literally reading to know, like, is her brother gonna, you know, do the thing with the stuff? And like, you really get tied in to these other side stories that are building upon this one big story, but you want to know, and you want to know even the other sister, whom none of us have brought up, but you know, Elaine's got another sister, and she's a problem child, and she actually is on my list of least liked characters in the book, not Elaine. Elaine redeems herself. But But you want to know, where do these people land? What happens to them? And so you start turning the pages just to know the little things.
Mm-hmm. That's so true, especially with when you mentioned with the friends, because Ostern, you know, he asked Lucan at the end of book two, "Hey, did you see Delilah?" And he's like he just lies to him. He's like, "No," like, you know, and then Ostern obviously
Yeah.
finds out that Lucan lied, you know, with this side story with what Ostern and the girl that he likes and Vinal, and you know, definitely answers a lot of the side quests like you mentioned in book two.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that is that even though you give us that satisfaction of eventually learning a lot of the back history and what happened, the story itself could stand without it. I mean, we all love to know the reasoning behind everything, but the story stands. If we never knew Elaine's actual past and like what happened to her, the story would still stand as a great story and end as a great story. That was just extra, like, icing on the cake. So to your credit as an author, you wrote a whole bunch of extra stuff that a lot of people would be like, don't do that, that
Right.
actually propped up the main story so much that it made the journey really enjoyable. Whether you stop at book one, two, or go all the way through, it doesn't matter where you end up in that journey. You're going to be happy with it, and that's a testament to your writing skills.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
find it interesting what you just said about, like, people not liking when you do that, but you did it well. And I think that's a lot of when a writer can break rules and do it well, that's when it's like the most effective. And so,
Mm,
like, because there's all these rules, you do not, like, with yours last, Victoria, with yours last month, don't use a lot of cliches, but yours worked because it really
yes.
brought the culture and all of that into it. So, and you could tell it was done intentionally too, because it wasn't just like accidentally thrown in here. It was very intentional. And so when you break those little rules, if you do it well, it ends up actually standing out quite a bit.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I was curious about was that, because Elaine struggles a lot with trust, and that felt like very deeply personal. How much of her emotional journey was inspired by your own personal journey in life?
Hmm. That's a good question. Honestly, if I can say when it comes to my main characters, I don't really add too much of myself. I think you'll see more of myself in the side characters. Uh, and I guess that's just because I love writing the side characters. But I guess with the trust, um, I've mentioned, like Lauren brought up a wonderful topic about father figures, so me not growing up with like a dad, maybe that developed some trust issues, I would say, but not with the male role model, just with people in general. But just saying that right now, I just got like a flash of memories right now. I did also grew up, I was the kid that went from school to school because my mom was always like, oh, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go here. So I was definitely that kid who always had to start over every time I went to school. And I think with that, you're just kind of like, not disassociate, but you're just like, oh, I'm not going to make friends. I'm not going to try because I'm probably going to move to another one. So perhaps it was just that kind of disconnection because Aline sort of has that with people. She gets along with the kids, they all flock to her because they see her good nature, but she's not going to bother with trying to make friends with anyone in the community in Melodia because they already have they already have like an image of her. They see her as like the town's heathen. So it would definitely just kind of be that, just that kind of experience, but nothing where I was severely betrayed or something of that matter. Just it's just more like a self-defense mechanism, I would have to say.
I have a question for all of you. Do you guys feel like there was a scene or any particular aspect of the book that you just really felt encapsulated the heart of Children of Rhema? It's kind of hard because you haven't read it in a
Ooh.
while, Lauren. So you're like probably digging through your head, like.
I do want to mention one scene. And I think it's when Elaine, her mom pulls her turban out when she's about to be engaged. And it almost plays out in slow motion because Lucan is in front of the crowd and he sees her hair fall for the first time. And I always ask myself, like, she struggles, like, she doesn't want her turban to be taken out, and her mom obviously she's a little bit of a perfectionist. And I wanted to mention that I love that scene a lot because I feel like Elaine was able to pick up this new identity by not just because she was hiding her hair, but because she was able to not to show like a side of her that she didn't realize she liked. And I feel like she didn't want to let go of that side because that was the side that Lucan met. They met when she had her head wrap on. And I believe she was more afraid of losing that side. And obviously Lucan was jaw dropped when he saw her, but I think that was my favorite part.
I
Victoria.
think my favorite part, and I think my favorite part, and you guys help me because it's been a little bit since I've read these books too. But when Aline finally sees where Lucan's from, where Lucan was a little child, when all the things happened without being spoilery to
Mhm.
Lucan, when she sees that, to me that was incredibly impactful. Um, to the point where in my mind I see it like I was watching it on a screen and not reading it in a book. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. That's what felt pivotal to me. There were these other little scenes that happened here and there with the family, but that moment was like, oh, I just felt real. It was good.
For sure.
I don't know if it would encapsulate the entire story, but the scene that I love the most, and you guys probably just gonna chuckle because it's in the first book, is their first interaction in the kitchen with the soup and the ladder. Oh my God, it was like, okay, it doesn't matter
Yes.
what this story is about. I'm gonna finish this book just based on that scene alone. You could have brought in a robot and started to go off on an intergalactic adventure, and I'd have kept going. But I mean, like that scene that just sealed the deal, and it was so early in the story. It's like if you can even come close to this scene again and again and again, this is gold. And at that point, like I said, with my memory so horrible, that's the one that still pops out like every single time. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't picked it up because it's really early in the book, but you'll know. You'll just
Involves a
know when
ladle.
you read it. It involves a ladle and some soup and some thoughts.
Well, thank you guys so much. I do appreciate. I do want to ask you guys, is there any other questions you have for Miriam before we wrap this up? Or for the group?
Is this a bad time to ask if you'll do me a map?
Hey, I would love to.
First.
Asking
I'm
you
gonna have to
can.
write a book for that first, but
Yeah, when I saw her maps, I was like, maybe she's somebody I could ask to do my map because
I
mine is sketchy,
I
literally.
gotta see yours. I'm actually curious of how you did yours.
Mine was just with watercolors. It's all that I did it with, and some
Oh,
drawings. Like I literally like to make the outline of the country or whatever. Wherever the water like splashed a little bit is how I determined where it
my
ended. So it's like,
goodness.
because it doesn't end perfectly.
I love that.
But literally that's all I've done so far. And like it just gives me an idea. So because it has dragons. So when they fly to different
Ooh.
places, I don't accidentally have them going east when they're really going west or flying over something and it's like, so it's literally very sketchy. Just
And you
nothing.
mentioned this is for your work in progress?
Yes, it is.
The moment you mentioned dragons, I was just like, okay, what is this about?
It's actually middle grade. It's
Oh,
for
okay.
it's middle grade. Yeah, that's where I that is actually my favorite genre. I'd have to say is middle grade. And then the romantasy would be the second, and then some of the other genres. But yeah, I actually absolutely love the whimsicalness of middle grade. There's something about it to me.
Um,
But anyway, I just wanted to thank you guys so much. I really appreciate, and I hope that we stay in contact so we can continue these sort of talks. And I want to keep reading some of your books. Again, thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Lauren. Sorry, had to look at your name. My brain just stopped. Lauren. And do you have anything currently out, Lauren?
Like I said, the Beyond the Still Wall is written in a novel form, and then we translate it to the web comic. And when we reach arcs, we do plan to release that novel, but I wouldn't want to do it like a periodical because the time that is invested, my wife's time in the art is enormous, and I'd hate to tease somebody with a book and then be like, yeah, well, it's going to be a little while because we don't want to outpace the comics. So if you want the extra details and the extra stuff that we can't put in the art, just stick around and watch because you will get the novel form of it.
Do
The artwork is amazing.
any of you guys have newsletters? Because I often subscribe to those so I can see like art clips and stuff like that of.
Oh yeah, on my website for sure.
Okay.
We don't have a newsletter per se, but we do have there is a news feed on the site, and you can RSS subscribe to it. We haven't really pushed the story a lot because like on a web comic, I didn't want to get a whole bunch of attention and not have enough pages up. So ours is just kind of there. I kind of like to talk about it, and there's lots of people that are waiting for us to keep cracking out the pages. But
I would love to see. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I would love to see yours. You have a newsletter because I would love to see like little clips of the artwork that, just like a sneak peek and stuff. I would absolutely those are the type of newsletters that I really geek out in and the authors that I tend to follow. So I think you should do that. And if you do, definitely shoot me an email and I'll subscribe. And I'll subscribe to all of yours actually, because I try to subscribe to everybody's. And just kind of glance through. There's a few that I just really, really love. But anyway, again, thank you guys so much. I do appreciate it. And for our viewers, if you love tonight's discussion, make sure to check out my Patreon, where you can catch extended author interviews, behind the scene content, and exclusive giveaways. Right now, we are giving away A Heart of Flame by Rebecca Maeve Hartwell. She's normally on here, but she was not able to make it this week. I was very bummed about that. But her book is on my giveaway at the current moment. And also, I have 2 copies of Polly Holyoke's Skyrider series. She was also on previously this year. She is a middle grade writer. And you can join us on December 10th, where we'll be geeking out over A Court of Mist and Fury, the second book in the ACOTAR series. Again, thank you guys very much. I'm going to say bye to the viewers, and I would like you guys to stay on so that way we can continue and talk for a moment. And this is always awkward because it takes me forever to get this. I love that I cannot do this